Okay, today we're going to have a small talk, and again, it's a talk, okay? And mediumship of physical effect, or physical phenomena, if you prefer. Most of my conversation will deal primarily with the causes and consequences rather than on the effect itself, on the phenomena itself. We're going to see many types of phenomena from typology to somatology to rapping to haunted house to poltergeist. Although all this effect, what's happened, is an object of curiosity, and it does catch our attention, just like a bad news catch our attention, the news, and that's why the news stresses bad news all the time. But I don't want to make that my topic of discussion really, okay? Because to know that there are noises being made on the wall of the house, yeah, it's interesting, but more important is to understand the causes and consequences of those little taps on the walls and on the floor of a house. Although I do understand that those catch our attention, and for that reason, spirits use it, okay? And the very beginning of our studies, the very first slide that we see over here, of two pictures of physical phenomena, two pictures of materializations, and those materializations happened in the house of one of the brothers of Francisco Cândido Xavier. His name was André Luiz, actually. And Chico Xavier was a medium, or was a medium of many abilities, one of them being the physical effect. And for 1 year, from 1952 to 1953, he performed, or in his center, then the house of his brother, performed those sessions of materializations. So you see on the screen over there, the torch is actually the way that Emmanuel chose to present himself at one occasion. That's pretty much all of those light, the spirits dress in light because they're luminous by themselves. And the second one is the spirit of Mei Mei. It was a nurse in previous reincarnation, and was dictated some books through Chico Xavier, and also had some apparitions, as you see over there, but also provide some of the physical phenomena with the bringing of flowers to the center, the bringing of smells of flowers. It is described that every time they should give a communication, you'd present at the center, prior to her speaking or anything like that, the whole ambient would be perfumed, so to say, with the smells of flowers. These are all physical phenomena. Okay, so in reality, we can move João, please. Yeah, so in reality, physical phenomena or physical effects, all the mediumistic phenomena that are able to impress our physical senses. Okay, whatever physical sense that may be. Okay, it may be it impresses our sensorial organs, eyes, ears, nose, tactile, regardless of the ostensiveness of the medium. And of course, here I'm saying that we are all mediums. The great majority of us are not ostensive mediums. The great majority of us, in order to visualize, to hear, to smell, touch anything pertaining to the spiritual world would be able to do that only through a physical phenomenon. A more ostensive medium may have windows open to the spiritual world that most of us do not have. A more ostensive medium may be able to see things that our sensorial organs cannot see, cannot hear, cannot smell, cannot touch. But a more ostensive medium may be able to do that. So if we, and I would say ourselves non-medium here just for sake of discussion, because you are all mediums again, if we do not have the ostensive mediumship and are able to perceive physical phenomena happening, spiritual phenomena happening, those spiritual phenomena are by definition physical phenomena because they impresses our physical senses. Okay, now it says that some are spontaneous. That means that they are independent of any human will, while others can be artificially induced. What it's meant by that is that very often a medium of physical phenomena, likewise intelligent phenomena as well for that matter, are not even aware of its potential, not even aware of its mediumship. Okay, and they are basically 100% passive on the effect itself. In other cases, what they mean by artificially induced, meaning that the medium is aware of its potential, is aware of its ability to produce the phenomena. It will call for the phenomenon to happen, which may or may not happen because it depends on the spirits to perform it or not. Okay, and will guide with intention the effect itself, meaning that a physical effect of, say, of typology, which just tapping, I may, if I'm a medium of physical effect, ask the spirit to write my name, so to say. And let's say that each letter corresponds to a number of tap. So Elmo would be 5 taps, E would be 5 taps, L number of taps. You know, you can imagine how much patience is required to write one simple small sentence. But that is me using my will to produce the phenomena. Having said that, again, the spirit or the spirits may or may not go along with my will. But my will is there, so it's artificially induced. Okay, you understand the differentiation of that? Any questions? Okay, so can move on. Next. Although the topic of ectoplasm will come much farther in this presentation, I'm really uncomfortable to continue talking about physical phenomena without giving at least a quick introduction on ectoplasm. Because like Kardec always does, it starts from the beginning. It starts with the Genesis. The very first topic of discussion in the Medium's book, or in the Spirit's book, is God, because God is the genesis, the beginning of everything. And so Kardec always starts from the beginning. And the very genesis of the physical phenomena is ectoplasm. So to me, it's hard to continue this conversation without giving a quick presentation of this substance that is called ectoplasm. Okay. The first time that it was described, scientifically described, and given its name was by Charles Richet, a French scientist, Nobel Prize actual winner. I don't forget the year, but for the description of anaphylaxis. He was the first one to describe the anaphylactic shock and the whole process of anaphylaxis. Did tremendous amount of research in spiritualistic type of phenomena. Later on, you can say spiritists phenomena. He was the first one to describe this substance that is produced in good amount of quantity and donated to the spirit, so to say, to perform the so-called physical phenomena. So the ectoplasm, we don't know very much about it yet. I think we are lacking behind in the research of it. One of the sources that we have to use here, and I did use, is Dacio Yandoli on the book Physiological Transdimensional Physiology. I have a hard time to translate, only in Portuguese. And there is also a very good book by the doctor Paulo César Fructuoso, that is The Occult Face of Medicine. He is one of the few performers of physical phenomena to these days in a spiritist center in Rio de Janeiro, where they still perform surgical, well, let's say, spiritual therapies. Some are surgical, some are not surgical. And in his book, he gives a pretty good description and understand of ectoplasm. Unfortunately, it's only in Portuguese. Another book that can be used for those who read Portuguese is the Psi Quântico by Hernani Guimarães Andrade. And also for the same author, you have the book Espírito, Perispírito e Alma, also not translated as well. I'm just giving those references for anyone who wants to go deeper into the study. But again, deep is still quite shallow because you don't have that much information about it. The greatest depth, I would say, comes from Hernani Guimarães, who was himself a scientist and did an immense amount of research in this area. As of now, the most accepted origin of ectoplasm is that is a byproduct, so to say, of the production of ATP in the mitochondrium, in the process of producing ATP, which is basically the energy that we use in our physical body for everything. When oxygen and glucose meets one another inside of the mitochondria, there is that big explosion, and as a byproduct, there is a release of the substance called ectoplasm. Having said that, every living individual has a mitochondria that produces some kind of a ATP for its own survival, will produce ectoplasm. So ectoplasm is not only a human thing, most of living things will produce some amount of it. And in the books of Andrea Luiz's description of spirits going into nature, what is going and getting resources to use to manipulate physical matter. So you can get ectoplasm for other sources other than the humans. But in order to perform a physical phenomena, you would need a medium of a physical effect that would be one who are able to produce a good amount of ectoplasm and be able to donate those ectoplasm, aware of it or unaware of it, for the production of the physical phenomena. there is an issue we're going to see later on of quantity. The quantity is significant for the physical phenomenon. The more ectoplasma there is, the more dense, materialized something may be. And you have descriptions of apparitions in which not the whole perispirit of the spirit could be seen, only about half, only the head, only the hands. And presumably that's because the amount of ectoplasm was only enough for those most important parts, not for the materialization of the whole entire body. Okay, we're going to see more about ectoplasm ahead, but I think it's important that we give this introduction of ectoplasm, because like on this question right now, can a spirit act without resorting to a medium? That's from the Spirit's book. And the answer from the Spirit is it can act without the medium being aware of it. In other words, many persons help spirits to produce certain phenomena without even suspecting it. So one of us may be a medium of physical effect. We may be producing a good amount of ectoplasm, expelling it out, and it may be used by spirits without us not even knowing it. There is another very good book, unfortunately also not translated, which one that I use very often for my research on mediumship, is by Zalmino Zimmerman, and the name of the book is Theory of Mediumship. In this book, he put passes as in the category as a physical phenomenon. I agree in part, personally, but it makes completely sense that when we are giving passes, spirits are utilizing some of our ectoplasm that, again, we all produce, not enough for great manifestations, but to give a pass, maybe it may suffice. To me, it's pretty logical. And what I'm trying to say here is that every time that we give passes, we may be acting as a medium of physical effect without having that understanding of it. Okay, so spirit, we very often participate in actions of spirit with or without knowing it. And that may be on the physical side. That's the part that we're going to stress, because that's our topic of conversation, but may also be in the intelligent effect as well. Okay, questions? If anyone has any questions, go ahead and speak out loud. I don't think I'll be able to look in at the chat, okay?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Now, ectoplasm is a substance produced by incarnate spirits that is activated by the spirits?
What do you mean by activated?
Okay, that it's produced by the spirits. It's activated. The physical being can only produce it if it's activated by the spirit that wants it, needs it. Oh, that means that the person itself cannot produce it just for the sake of producing it. Because what's the purpose of it? Am I making sense in my question?
Yeah, if I understand you, no, that's not correct.
That's not correct. Okay.
No. Like, imagine that a car that uses gasoline. In the combustion of gasoline, it produces the energy that moves the car, right?
Yes.
As a byproduct, it produces other things. CO2 that is spelled in the atmosphere. It produces other things, right?
The fumes in the exhaust, yeah.
Right. It produces other things in that combustion of the gasoline when it meets oxygen and catches on fire, produce all that energy that moves the car. And as a byproduct of that reaction, it produces other things, pollution basically, right?
Yes, I'm following.
Right, it's there. Being utilized or not, being good or not, it's there. Okay, so in theory, again, in theory, we don't know that for absolutely for sure yet. In the production of ATP, which is the energy for the body, we create that pollution called ectoplasm. It's a byproduct. It's a byproduct of the reaction. The reaction happens, when reaction happens, it produces many things. It produces heat, it produces many things. It may or may not be utilized. One of the byproduct of the production of ATPs would be ectoplasm. Those who are able to produce a good amount accumulate and donate are mediums of physical effect. Now, we all have mitochondrium, we all produce ATP, so we all produce ectoplasm. Is it enough to be utilized as by spirits? Perhaps not to create those big physical effects like typology, sematology, apportations, all those types of phenomena they're going to see ahead, maybe be plenty enough, let's say, to give a pass, something like that.
Beautiful. Okay. Well explained with the car. Yeah, very good analogy, Elmo. Very good analogy.
Okay. All right. Next. So, what we're going to see here now in the next few slides are a bunch of types of physical phenomena. And again, I'm not really interested in the description of the phenomenon itself, rather more interested in cause and consequences of that. And keep in mind, right now, turning table, I think I need to read because those on the phone does not have access to the images. So in this slide, there is of table turning. There is a picture of individuals surrounding a table, looks like the time of Kardec, and it reads that the simplest effect and one of the first to be observed is the circular movement imparted to a table. This effect may be produced by using any other object as well. But since a table is the one that is used most often because it's the most convenient, the name table turning has been prevalent designation for this type of phenomena. And what is this type of phenomenon? Again, there must be a medium of physical effect to donate ectoplasm, okay? This medium of physical effect may be present in that room, maybe one of the individuals surrounding that table, or it may be in another place who donate that ectoplasm that is brought in by spirits, that they will kind of coat, so to say, that table, and use the mind power, the spirit's mind power, to give movement to that table or to any other object for that matter, okay? And that table or any other object, you'll be almost as if giving temporary life to it, okay? And it will respond intelligently to intelligent questions, you answer questions, and you made Kardec to question as much as I understand, a table does not have a brain, as table is not intelligent, it cannot produce intelligent effects. So there gotta be something that is intelligent that is causing that phenomenon to happen. Okay, and what is that phenomenon? Now we understand that that table, this object, is somewhat covered or sort of coated with ectoplasm, and ectoplasm having this, the best way to describe it is what in chemistry is called saponification. If you put your hands in oil, let's say that you put both your hands in oil or grease or anything like that, and then you want to get rid of the grease that is in your hand, and you put your hands under the water and you wash your hand, what's going to happen? Nothing, right? Your hand will remain greasy and oiled. And that's the reason is because oil or lipids repels water. They are not very friendly to one another. They repel one another. So if you try to wash oil or grease from your hands with just water, it does not work. So what do? You get soap. You put soap in your hand, put it under the water, and the lipid, the oil, the grease is all gone. Why is that? Because a chemical reaction just happened over there. It's called saponification. The soap is an intermediary, so to say, between the water and the oil. It allows them to interact. It allows them to react with one another. And once the reaction happens, then you can get rid of the lipid of the grease that was in your hand. Ectoplasm is something like that. There is an intermediary that has affinity with more ethereal matter and more ponderable matter, meaning our perispirit is also matter. You know that very well, right? That's not a point of discussion at this point anymore, right? But it's of a very ethereal nature and cannot interact with ponderable matter. So we need something that allows that interaction to take place. And that thing is the ectoplasm. The ectoplasm will allow more ethereal matter, in the case perispirit, being more objective in our discussion, with physical matter, and in this table turning, the ponderable matter will be the table. So coating the table with ectoplasm allows the spirit to interact with that table temporarily, giving that a kind of a temporary life, so to say. Is that well understood? Now you can go to the next one. Ron, if you can do me a favor, it doesn't show, you can just give me, put the whole thing. I'm not gonna go step by step. And if you can give me the number of the slide, because I cannot see it, just can tell me what the number of the slide each time. There you go.
I don't have the number here, but
that's okay.
This is,
never mind then.
That's number 4, I think.
No, that's much more. That's okay. That's fine. It's just to give me an idea of how far I have to go time-wise, but that's okay. And as I said, we're gonna have here on the next slides a series of types of physical phenomena. One very important thing, and that reads on the slide here, that this slide says clatters, noises, raps, and signals. That would be typology and sematology. It says regarding the manifestation of the physical effect, we must be on guard against jumping to conclusions, since there are many natural causes that can produce them. Meaning, in order for us to call a phenomena as a spiritual phenomenon, it must be a conclusion of exclusion, if that's a term. Meaning that we need to exclude all other possible physical causes for that thing to be happening. So we are hearing taps coming from the ceiling of your house. We are hearing whistling noises that comes from the closet. Whatever that is catching your physical sensorial organs, you have to make sure that you rule out all the possible physical causes before you say that, oh, it comes from a spiritual cause. All right, and here there's some examples of it, of physical causes that we have to make sure that you rule them out before you call a spiritual phenomena a spiritual phenomena. Make sure that it's not the wind that vibrates or shaking an object. To make sure that it's not a body that moves itself without anyone's noticing, that it's not an acute effect, that is not a hidden animal or an insect. That is not the malice of distasteful jokers. I'm reading for the people who does not have access to the slides. There's a lot of people over there with malicious intentions, who you provoke those noises or movement of objects trying to distract or to impress other individuals. It describes the spirit noises have specific and particular characteristics with variable intensity and tone, which makes them easy to recognize and therefore not so easy to confuse with cracking of woods, crackling of fires, or the dull tick-tock of a clock. That description actually comes from Kardec in the Medium's book, in which there are ways, if one pays close attention, to differentiate noise that they have a spiritual genesis, and those who do not. Okay, I take the word easy with a big grain of salt over there. I don't think anything is easy in that matter. The raps are dry, sometimes muffled, weak and light, and sometimes loud and distinct, even noisy, and they change places and repeat themselves without any discernible mechanical regularity. So that's another way that Kardec puts over there, that we can differentiate physical from spiritual raps. Most effective means of controlling them, which leaves no doubt as their origin, is to subject them to our will. If the noises make themselves heard wherever we so indicate, we cannot deny that there are an intelligent cause of it. So here what Kardec is suggesting is put it to a test. It can be tested. If there is a tap in the ceiling of their house, and you can challenge the spirit and say, if it's really in the spiritual, you make that noise of the northeast corner of the room, do the same thing on the southwest corner of the room. If the noise now appear on the location that you desire, that you ask to be happening, you can strongly suspect, yet not conclusively so, but strongly suspect that it has a spiritual cause, because it does have uh, um, an intelligent cause behind it. Otherwise, it would not obey your command. If the thing is happening on the northeast part of the room, and I say, make it happen in the southwest part of the room, and it does happen as I suggest, as I asked, there's a strong suspicion right there, if it yet not conclusive, and yet not conclusive, because maybe a human person doing that try to impress me, but in itself, I already know there is an intelligent cause behind it. Okay, and if it can repeatedly act according to our will, perhaps we can label it as we can definitely label it as having an intelligent cause, and therefore it's coming from an intelligent thing that may be incarnate or discarnate spirit. And a little bit more research, it'd be easy to eliminate the incarnate, and you can definitely assume that it's come indeed from discarnate spirits. But again, always an diagnosis of exclusion, conclusion of exclusion, eliminate all the other possible causes. Having done that, then I can say, yeah, it does have an spiritual genesis. Before that, be very careful. And in my own experience in our talk in the Spirit Center, when we speak with people and fraternal assistance, there is almost a kind of disappointment when you put those things at the table. You know, individuals come to you already saying, there is a spirit in my house, there is this, and say, well, how can I say that? Could be A, B, C, D, and E, and F before you can call it a spirit. How can you jump? The first conclusion that you go is that there's a spirit. That should be the very last one. People usually doesn't like to hear that, but that's the only safe way to proceed. Okay? Next. Okay, here again is what I'm telling you, I'm not really interested in the mechanism of action of things, but in the causes and consequence. I go back to the turning table, something that is important that I didn't mention. The significance of the turning table, as Kardec presented in the Medium's book, in the part that deals with physical effect, it tells on page 112, what I'm going to read, that the turning table will always represent the starting point of the Spiritist doctrine. And that's why we must give them a much more in-depth treatment by presenting Spirit's phenomena in their simplest expression. Studying what causes them will become easier, and once a theory is established, it will give us the key to more complex effect. So the significance of this type of physical effect that was labeled as the turning tables is really the very beginning of a formal teaching from the spirits. That is when we began a formal means that the spirits used to educate us, to teach us something. And that's the great importance of the turning table, according to Kardec. And it's obvious from that it evolved, that now we can get the teachings without resourcing to such a difficult, long process to produce one word or to produce a sentence. Now we can, with much more efficacy, produce entire books. In the many types of physical effect, we have typology, and that's the next slide that's being presented, typology and sematology. When the mediumistic manifestation is done through reps, it's called typology. So basically, now that being, again, spontaneous, without the will of the medium, without the will of the participants of that meeting, the spirit is utilizing ectoplasm at its own will, and the medium is 100% passive or artificially produced, meaning that there is participation of the will of the medium of anyone in that part, meaning that in the typology we may agree that one means yes, two means no. That is a will over there. So you place a question that the answer, of course, has to be yes or no to spirits, and they will respond with yes or no. That is typology. Next slide. Okay. Okay, so go back so we talked a little bit to sematology. Now, sematology is the basically sign language. Okay, Kardec describes sematology as being sign language. Okay, and again, in this book, The Theory of Mediumship of Zimmerman, he puts 2 or 3 pages for each one of those things. Okay, so there is he goes in depth of explaining how it happens. We don't have the time, not personally, not interested on the mechanism of how those things happens. But in sematology, that very often will happen together with typology, is a good means in which you can read the character of the spirit, so to say. So in the movements of objects, let's assume that the spirit is trying to convey a message to us through physical phenomena, and we are not getting it. And the spirit becomes irritated. And now, instead of using a normal tone, let's say, of rapping, something educated, so to say, to signal, now it becomes angry, harsh. The movements of the circular movement of the tables that are very more often used now becomes pushing against individual's body. Those are all signals. It's giving signals of what's happening to that spirit at that moment. Okay, so they usually sematology and typology is all very often used together. If the question placed by the members of the meeting to the spirit requires a more difficult way of expressing through reps, that is a more complex, the spirit may use sematology, may use different means to signal. That's why signaling, to signal, to convey what the spirit is trying to say. And that may be by tuning an object in direction of something that is trying to say, maybe to the window, to symbolize air, to symbolize the wind, that the spirit is not being able to to express to reps, it may use language signs by any means, any possible means. That's what sematology means. Okay. Next. Now, poltergeist. Poltergeist is basically a German word in which polster means noise, geist, ghost. So basically, a noise from ghosts. It's nothing more than a potpourri of physical effects happen at the same time in the same location. It's just as simple as that. So it's a lot of things happening of a spiritual cause. Of course, once you rule out all the possible physical causes, okay, that is happening in one same place. I mean, things are moving. You can go to the next slide. This next slide has the picture of a room of a room in which two incarnate individual, one incarnate individual is witnessing a lot of things happening at the same time. There is objects flying around. There is levitation of inanimate objects. Most likely noises that it definitely cannot hear in the picture. But it is, again, a potpourri of things happening at the same time in the same area. Okay. The slide reads, throwing an objects as poltergeist usually is more than that. It is a bunch of things happening at the same time. Furniture and objects are flipped over. Various projectiles are heard about outside the room. Doors and windows are opened and closed by invisible hands. Window panes are broken, and none of this can be attributed to illusion. So one thing that whoever's in that ambient, whoever's in there will see what's going on, and from the result of it, no one can deny that it's happened. No one can attribute to be an illusion. This disorder is quite often very real, though at some time it's only apparent. I put a question mark on that myself. If it's happening, if the plates are falling off the shelves, hitting the floor and breaking apart, how can you say that it's only apparent? I don't know what the meaning of that. Raptors may be heard in an adjoining rooms. I mean, that is maybe happening in that same room where you are or adjacent rooms, but usually in one house, in one physical space is where the poltergeist has happened. Crash of dinnerware as it apparently hits the floor. I also put a question mark as apparently. It does or it does not. If it's broken on the floor, it's because it did hit the floor. I also put a question mark on that one. Logs of wood rolling around, and I could not say that is apparent. It does roll or it does not roll. As simple as that. Again, usually more important is going to causes. It's hard to imagine that poltergeists or those potpourri of physical phenomena has a good positive intention. It's come from well-intended spirits, right? That is always what we call the epicenter. What is the epicenter? Epicenter is nothing more than the medium who donates the ectoplasm. And very often, again, that medium is not even aware of its abilities, of its potentials. Very usually does not have a will on the phenomena. Very often, the medium will be 100% passive. Um, Having said the epicenter is what the spirit will mainly use as the source to produce the phenomena, but maybe they may resource as well to other sources of nature that can be used to augment the ability to produce some of those phenomena. So some of those phenomena are very powerful, so to say. That it's like an earthquake combined with powerful windows in the same room. Things happening, and that has been documented with no apparently physical cause. Usually, the intention is to cause terror, to cause fear, and even to cause harm. Some objects as being thrown directed at individuals with the intention or apparent intention of cause harm. Questions?
I have a question now.
Hi.
Hi. So the phenomenon is more about the medium that is at that moment right now than the space itself. That's what sometimes I get confused. It's more like, the house itself or the person who is there that make that possible.
Um, it the medium may or may not be the target. Okay, it's definitely targeted at someone, individual, or someone group of individual. Right? It's targeted at someone. It may or may not be the medium itself. The medium may not even be present in that room where those things are happening. If if things happens to me, I'm here in my house and poltergeist is happening here. I go to visit you and things start happening in your house. I go to visit João and things start happening in João's house. What's the common denominator here? It's me, right? So perhaps they are after me, I would say, right? And likely I am a medium of his phenomenon, but not necessarily. They may be collecting the necessary resources or ectoplasm from another source and bring with them to terrorize me, right? But um, I may be the medium of physical phenomena, not knowing, and things is happening is my neighbor's house. That my neighbor is the target. In that house, they don't have enough ectoplasm. They come to my house, get from me, and target them. So very often it's targeted at an individual or a group of individuals, right? Not necessarily the medium. Does it answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
And I have another question. So in this case, when such a thing happens, what is the best to do? Like besides prayers, I don't know.
Run.
Okay.
Just kidding. Just kidding. uh, we're going to see when it start exorcism. The best thing to do, anticipate the slides are going to see, is work off this obsession, and that should be done by well prepared spiritist, medium or not medium, that will have conversation, so to say, with those spirits who are causing those phenomena. In other words, is the education of both the incarnate being target and the spirits causing the phenomenon. Education is a solution. And of course, prayers, prayers, and prayers. And more important, the practice of goodness. If you want to get yourself involved in protecting energies, do good things.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
next. Sure. All right, that slide's now for those who doesn't have access to the slide. This shows the picture of Ernesto Bolzano, also a researcher of spiritualist things. They later become an spiritist. Confess never read none of his book, but apparently did some good amount of research in physical phenomena, being himself a medium, being himself able, as much as I understand, able to produce some phenomena. Erwin Ernesto Bolzano was a great spiritist investigator in the past, has told us the phenomena of poltergeist, which are common in Europe, was known as the phenomena of infestation by the indigenous people in various parts of the world. The word infestation is used with respect to places where there are spirits who provoke raps, the falling of objects, ghostly noises, and, as always, the ambiguous throwing of stones. The only significance of this slide is to remind us that mediumship, physical phenomena, or spiritual phenomena, being physical, intelligent, did not appear when Spiritism came up. It was always present. If we didn't have more scientific or classical nomenclature to them, they always happened before. So one of the on the nomenclatures given the past for the same process of poltergeisters was infestations, meaning that things without any physical cause were happening in the same place, that could not be explained by physical causes, and they, especially more native, more simple people deprived of pride, was easy to them to understand that it was coming from any spiritual cause. Always happened, it always happens, and what Spiritism does as a science is explains and give a proper nomenclature as every science requires. Okay, next. All right, so I come to the parts of things that I don't really enjoy. Haunted houses and haunting. What is this? Very often, what's happening here, there's places inhabited by discarnate spirits who, one, are not aware that they are discarnate. They think they still incarnate and live in that same environment. That incarnate ones, one of us, were more sensitive, as a little more extensive mediumship, so to say, may be able to perceive their presence, may be able to notice that they are present. Some of those individuals may be mediums of physical effect, able to produce enough ectoplasm to be used by those spirits. And then some physical phenomena may happen in that environment. Two, it can be caused by spirits who are aware that they are discarnate, but they are way too attached to material possessions, being the house itself, or to belongs inside of that house, and they don't want to depart from those material things, and they do not allow the other spirits, in the case incarnate, may take possession of those material things, the house or objects inside of the house, and they will do everything that they can to disturb the peace of those live in that ambient. And if there is again a medium of physical effect in the house or around the house, spirits may be used that ectoplasm to produce physical effect to try to scare people out of those places. And another possibility here you're gonna see ahead. Spirit just trying to have some fun. Spirits just, who enjoy seeing people running away scared. They don't care for the house. They don't care for the ambience. They just want to have some fun. What's wrong with that, right? Utilizing some physical some ectoplasm, they can produce some physical phenomena, and they enjoy people being scared of it. Okay, next. That's just what I have read. I have studied already. The slide reads, spirits who are still very attached to people or material things remain in certain places for a variable amount of time, producing phenomena or physical effects which cause fear. The spirits who haunt certain places and make disturbances are mostly trying to entertain themselves at the expense of the gullible and cowardly rather than doing evil. Again, just as I said, some spirits may try to scare people of things that they think this still belongs to them, but they just want to have some fun. Next. Next. I have no idea what that is. Perhaps the most famous house in Spiritism that we can mention is the Fox Sisters cabin. And the only significance that we can take from that is that perhaps the first well-cataloged, documented attempt to go beyond than observing a phenomena and trying to interact with the individuals or spirits, in this case, producing the phenomena. I'm sure it happened before, but it's the first one that you have been so well cataloged, so well documented, when those sisters tries to interact with the spirit and were able to get identity and a lot of information from that spirit. Next. To me, completely meaningless, but these slides read for those who are not here. Haunted city, Venice, Italy, one of the most haunted cities in Europe. It's said that there are numerous locations where we can see the ghostly figures in the shadows of the old buildings, which usually vanish into thin air when they realize that they are being spotted. To me, it has no meaning. Next. Now, this slide to me has significance. It reads, one of the most typical characteristics of haunting is the manifestation of visible and even photographable ghosts. The ghost, in the case spirit, of course, usually seems unconscious and executes certain automatic acts as if under somnambulism. It usually irradiates coldness and gives off an impression of being surrounded by a mist-like vapor of condensed water. To me, the significance of that is when I talked before about the quantity, more not in this case quality, but quantity of ectoplasm that will basically naturally be a question of density, the amount of ectoplasm that allows um, spirits to be so well covered with ectoplasm that they become visible, they can be photographed, and will create around them that aspect of coldness in the air, things of that nature. To me, the significance of this slide is more about the importance of quantity when dealing with ectoplasm. The greater the amount, the greater the density, the greater the possibility of perispirits or other objects being being made visible, and even being able take shots, photographies of those perispirits or other objects being brought from the spiritual world and presented. Question. The question that is being typed, I'm not being able to read. Hopefully I have time at the end. Or you can interrupt and make and ask directly, okay? Next. Okay, so going with the question that was placed before, what to do when those poltergeist things are happening. One of the things that the church has designed is exorcism. Okay, the Catholic Church have designed it, have a very formal way to perform with the rituals, the prayers, the dogmas that goes along with that. Means of basically, and by the way, the Protestants, Christian religions also have their own dogmatic, ritualistic means of perform exorcism. I don't know if they call it the same word. The same word they call is exorcism, but they also have the word to expel the devil out of you or expel the devil of one environment. Okay. So the question placed by Kardec is, exorcism an effective means of expelling evil spirits from haunted places? And the answer is, have you often seen exorcisms successful? Have you ever seen an effective exorcism? No, you haven't. On the contrary, haven't the troubles doubles after exorcism's rites? That's because such spirits love being taken for the devil. So what is meant by that is that let's assume that they won't perform the exorcism, that you would be a priest, very often higher than a priest, because you have to be trained. You actually need to go with the Catholic Church, at least. You need to go to the Vatican and take a course on it. You have to be somewhat licensed and certified, so to say, to perform exorcism. Okay, and that training is actually done in the Vatican. So you go through that training, and let's assume that you are really a noble individual, spiritually speaking, with all the right moral qualifications, and the individual being tormented by evil spirits have acquired the merit. It may work, but what works there in reality was the elevated qualities of the one performing, plus, and more important, the effort done by the part of the one being tormented to elevate oneself, to not be vibrating at the level that it could be tormented by those spirits. So was the exorcism that worked? No, education is in reality what it worked. Conquest of moral values that really worked in this case. Could it work temporarily? That's very often what's being documented. That you have a little calm before the storms return, and very often when the storm return, it comes even stronger and even worse. Next. And that is the answer for that same question. So what is it that will work then? It will always be good. Good for you to say, always be good. And you will have good spirits at your side. Through good deeds, practicing patience, praying for them, little by little, the haunting will cease to exist. So again, as I said, educate yourself, transform yourself in a more um, morally righteous individual, that you vibrate at a level that will be associated, surrounded by more elevated protected spirits, and will be lower in, you'll be vibrating a higher frequency that the tormented spirits cannot reach you any longer. If you can be always good, good for you. Next, next. This is just another example of physical phenomena. It's called apportation. The picture just shows why spirits bring flowers presented to a group in the spirit center, and everybody is all to it. Next. Okay, so the phenomenon of apportation. The phenomenon denominated as apportation corresponds to an object that comes from outside into a place. This phenomenon only differs from those with, without, with the above because of the benevolent intention of the spirit who produces it, by the almost always pleasing nature of the object, and by the gentle and often delicate manner in which they are carried. The phenomenon consists in a spontaneous bringing of the object that were not in the meeting place at a few moments previously. They are usually flowers, but sometimes fruits, candy, jewelry, etc. Apportation always requires the greatest concentration and at the same time the greatest diffusion of certain fluids that can be only obtained by extremely well gifted mediums. Okay, so the author here is putting apportation as something of usually of good intentions, of good meaning, that the intention is to somewhat pacify the ambient or individual in that ambient, comfort or console individuals in that ambient, usually of a good nature. Those objects, maybe really physical objects that is brought into the room from an outside source. I mean, flowers that was picked in an outside garden, bring into the spirits. Extremely complex phenomena requires basically dematerialization and rematerialization, right? If you're gonna cross a flower from through the walls of a building, you would have to dematerialize that flower, bring it to the room, and then rematerialize that flower. So you can see the complexity involved in this phenomenon that will not be able to be performed by any spirits. You will be spirits of a higher education. And by the way, very often, those physical phenomena is not done by the most elevated spirits because of their difficulty to interact with more physical gross matter, including ectoplasm. So very often the physical phenomena is done by not very, very high evolved spirits. But in this case of apportation has been described something of a very good nature, somewhat elevated spirits, at least with the good intentions, at least with the moral qualities, to be in association with those higher spirits who will guide them, who will teach them how to perform things that they are now with their better spirit, talking about the more elevated spirits, so ethereal, so spiritualized that it's very hard for them to interact with more materialized, with more dense matter, including ectoplasm.
Elmo,
Yes.
it has been told to me, I don't have references, uh, regarding those well-gift mediums that participate in materialization. It has been told that it's sort of dangerous to those mediums when, you know, we manipulate the objects and we interfere in some way with the ectoplasm. Do you have any thoughts about that? Do you have any references regarding this?
Yes. Again, in the Paulo Cesar Fructuoso, this doctor who works with spiritual therapies in the Spirit Center in Rio. In this book, A Fase Oculta da Medicina, described that very well. And all the care that is necessary for that work it is amazing. That one of the reasons that is not very well practiced, very seldom with success, because it does requires tremendous amount of work from the spiritual world, from the physical world, the tremendous concentration and almost complete elimination, or any ill-intended thoughts and lower level kind of thoughts. Any one of those things may disrupt the work, may put the medium at risk. There is a process of basically the dematerialization of the medium almost in those processes. Dr. Fructuoso also describes as if it was a process of make a miniature of the medium itself. It seems like the physical body kind of gets smaller, so to say, in that process. If the environment is not absolutely perfect condition, the spirits responsible for the work on the ambient, you're not allowed to go through. So very often you go to the place and with a good intent, the right place where those things are being done and nothing happens is because the ambient was not proper and the spirits responsible for the work over there, you just not allow anything to happen. It's because it does exposes the medium to tremendous amount of risk. But if you have time, we're going to go through some of those ahead.
Yeah, I was Elmo.
Yeah.
I was thinking here if it's not worth we divide this in two, because we have 10 minutes and you have like I don't know 15 slides to go through. I don't know. You tell
What
me.
is the next slide? Is materialization. I would like to have actually
direct writing and direct voice.
To leave materialization only one topic for discussion for the next topic, because then I can go into physical surgeries and all this work being done in more depth.
Okay. So, you stop when you feel that you have to
Yeah,
stop.
so let's do the direct writing and direct voice. Next slide. So what you see here, so what you can see here is the process of proper nomenclature to things. As I said, every science must have its own nomenclature. So you say directed writing, you say, what does it mean? When you say nomatography, now you are giving a spiritist name to something that it's be understood anywhere and everywhere, if you understand the doctrine, of course. The same way that in any biology session throughout the world, if I say Canis familiaris, everybody knows I'm talking about dog. But if I go to a place that says dog or cão or cachorro or perro, it says, what are you talking about? But when you have a science that gives proper name, everywhere else you know what you're talking about. You say canis familiaris is a dog in every language and everywhere because that's the scientific nomenclature. So that's the importance of doing so. And nomatography is the so-called direct writing is the ability of basically spirits to bring their own pen and pencil. All you need to bring is the paper. You bring the paper, a medium that provided the ectoplasm, put a little blank paper inside a closet or inside a drawer, lock it with 16 different ways of locking it, wait a few minutes, open up, and now there is a message written that piece of paper. There was nothing inside of that drawer except the blank paper. So the spirits basically will bring their own pen or pencil, will utilize the ectoplasm that is available, and will produce a message on that piece of paper. How does it differ from psychography? Psychography is a physical intelligence. It's right over here. It differs from psychography, which is a transmission of a spiritual thought in writing through the hands of a medium. Writing held to be that of spirits and produced directly without a medium or a material device. Again, nomatography, all you have to provide is a blank piece of paper. They bring their own arms, they bring their own pen and pencil. And psychography, there is a interaction of the two petty spirits of the medium of psychography and the spirit, in which the thought of the medium will be captured. The thought of the spirit will be transmitted via perispirit through the medium, who will now use its own hands, and write the thoughts of that spirit. Okay? I will stop here now for questions. So like there's 10 questions over there. I'll try to answer the question at this point. And I'll leave the topic of materialization for the next time, if it's okay with you, João. And we can go ahead and expand the topic a little further into spiritual therapies, being surgeries, being passives, being all kinds of things. That includes therapy for us incarnate.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and we'll do that on the last Sunday of September.
Okay? Fine, good.
Anna has a question that she wrote on the chat. Can you see, or you want me to read?
No, go ahead and read.
Can you please elaborate on the risks to the medium? I guess she meant medium of physical effects, right?
Yes.
And that's something that you're probably going to discuss a lot next time, but maybe go a little bit.
Yeah, we'll discuss that in further in the next topic. Probably going to spend a good time on it. But basically, in the process of especially of the one that Luis suggests in his question, these are places in which whole spirits materialized completely to perform tasks. So let's assume the most common you can think is spiritual surgeries, in which a discarnate spirit will materialize, will be tangible, will sit next to you, and will perform a surgical procedure. Now, this surgical procedure is at an energy level, okay? Not necessarily they're gonna open a abdomen and to expose the liver to do a surgical procedure on that liver. It does at the energy level, and so much so there is a true surgery in that physical liver that if the individual goes later on and get, let's say, a CAT scan, it shows signs of surgeries in the past, although there is no scar on the skin. And the guy would say, I never had any physical surgery, I had spiritual surgery. And of course, you perplex the whole medical field. To be able to, my point is to be able to the spirit, to fully materialize, to be able to interact with matter at such a complex and tangible way to actually operate on someone's liver requires tremendous amounts of energy concentration. As this Dr. Fructoso says, the medium is usually taken to a special little room. Okay, it's not even a part of the group over there. They goes to a different room, goes over there in a state of concentration. It's like a very deep mediumistic trance. Is this actually described that the medium goes to a certain kind of, it's hard to use the word here. It looks like it actually becomes smaller, so much energy has to donate. Okay, and then all this energy is given up to that medium, to that spirit to perform whatever task it's going to perform. If anything goes wrong, there is the risk of that energy not being able to be replenished to that medium. Because usually those actions, when the whatever's being done, it's done, it's completed. There is another time in which the spirit goes back to the room where the medium is in a state of trance, okay, and the energy is replenished to that medium. If something goes wrong, he will not be able to get those energies replenished. It may be briefly aborted, and there is no time for the spirit to give back. It's not even back, it's being utilized, or being replenished, being replaced, so to say. What is utilized is utilized, but it has to be replaced to the medium. Okay. Another big risk, and that André Luiz describes in domains of mediumship, is, that's a word that I have a problem with, but infection, so to say. The place has to be completely cleansed of negative thoughts, bad vibrations, and even bacteria in the air, because those infectious materials, being bad energies, bad thoughts, or bacteria, may infect the energies that is being used to replenish the energy that medium lost, or is not lost, but donated. And when it's given back this energy to that medium, it may come already contaminated, so to say, with many things of a more ethereal nature, or, or spiritual nature, being low thoughts, low vibrations, and even that's what Conrad Luiz describes. Even bacterial things could affect that medium. So the risks are very, 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 very big. And if you recall, in the beginning of my lecture, I said that Chic Xavier worked with physical phenomena for only 1 year. Only 1 year. Because Emmanuel came to say, stop that nonsense. It's very nice. It really brings the attention of people, but it's kind of shallow, because the manifestation happens. The spirits come in and show up and show its light, and it's over. Everybody forget. We are here for the books. The books stay. The books are perpetual. The lessons that come from the books are perpetual. Plus the risk that the medium is exposed. Even in a center of Chico Xavier, the risks that the medium is exposed, it's not worth it. except for two reasons. According to Emmanuel, there is only two reasons that today justifies physical phenomena. One, serious research, because if you're going to research, you have to take the risk and expose yourself to it, or in the assistance of the sick. And then he complements, to assistance of the sick when our physical science is of no help. So as much as you know, what's happening in physical phenomena today is being primarily done for the assistance of the sick, with those things that we're going to talk next week or next time.
Okay. Thanks, Elmo. We will continue that on the last Sunday of September. We'll do the second part of the physical phenomena, manifestations. So next Sunday, which is the last Sunday of August and also the 5th Sunday of August, we are going to have a special Q&A, whole session of Q&A. Instead of having it a smaller section the first weekend of September, we are having the whole class on Sunday as an open Q&A. So both me and Elmo will be here. Also, we'll try to see if Julio will be available also. You can bring your questions and any types of questions that we'll try to discuss. What else do we have? For those that missed Tanya's lecture yesterday through the United States Spiritist Federation, we're getting great feedback from the lecture. It was really a very good lecture that talked about problems that we are facing with the COVID and the transformation of the world. If you haven't had the opportunity to watch it, I highly recommend that you watch it on the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube. Also on SGNY YouTube, I posted the talk there on the playlist USSF Talks. Okay, so it's really worth if you haven't seen or heard it yet. Okay, so we're going to ask Carol to do our final prayer.
Sure. Thank you very much, Elmo. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Infinite Creator, Supreme Intelligence, all goodness and grace, we are thankful for the opportunity today to be together for this lecture, The Mediumship of Physical Effects. We know this topic is very deep, very vast, and we appreciate the overview and the details regarding the cause and consequence. We give thanks to our spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, our spiritual guides, and our mentors who are with us, guiding us all the way to a higher way in this life. May we respect their wishes to help us. May we receive their blessings, and may we do our part as we go forth during the week. We give thanks and we continue with our prayers, with our studies and our mindfulness throughout the week, knowing that we can go deeper into all the subject matters that we have talked about today. We ask for continued blessings, love, light, and peace of Christ, the Christ light and love within our hearts and with our minds. May we go forth now and share the blessings we have received, share it with others who are able to receive it as we do our part through our discernment. And as we close this meeting today, we humbly ask for safety and protection, not only for ourselves, but for our loved ones, our family members, our friends, and those who we are working with in our daily life. May we close now and ask for continued safety, peace, and protection, guiding all those who are in need, those who may be suffering, who are in need of assistance, to receive healing, to receive guidance, to receive blessings in this physical world, as well as those who are in need in the physical and spiritual world. We close now and give thanks for this opportunity to receive this lecture, and bless all those who are here, all those who are unable to attend, and may we go forth with a deepening and grace in our hearts. We close now and ask for protection, peace, and light. We go forth now as beacons of light. Go forth in peace. So be it.